Bonjour, bienvenue encore une fois à cette émission. Je devrais vous dire Sego en Kanien'kehá. Alors, comme à l'habitude, on a des invités sur cette émission qu'on fait sur nos voisins de Kahnawake. Et évidemment, l'émission s'intitule les Kanien'kehá, les hôtes sur leur territoire et nos voisins au quotidien. Aujourd'hui, nous avons une invitée spéciale qui est la présidente du développement économique qu'ils appellent Tewatonizata à Kahnawake. Et elle va nous parler d'économie, mais toute l'évolution qu'il y a eu, comment ça se passe à Kahnawake, les questions qu'on peut se poser, les histoires de taxation et autres, et comment surtout une communauté autochtone qui se développe économiquement dans un bassin non autochtones avec des règlements ou des règlements qui s'imposent sur eux malgré le fait qu'ils disent qu'ils sont souverains et qu'ils n'ont pas à être soumis à ces règles-là. On va discuter de toutes ces choses-là ensemble. Ça va être assez passionnant. Probablement qu'on va répondre à plusieurs de vos questions. Alors, on y va. Peggy, it's a real joy and pleasure to see you again and to have you on this episode. Very, very glad that you can make the time to speak to us about economic development and Kahnawake. Just for starters, I think maybe if you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit how you got to become president of Tewa, and what you were doing before. I know you were on council. We used to meet a lot in our past lives, so maybe give us a little intro.
Oh, good afternoon, Sergio, and thank you very much for inviting me to be part of the show today. My name is Peggy Mayo-Standup, and presently right now I am the chairperson and president of the Kahnawake Tewatonizata Board of Directors, and Tewatonizata in English means the Economic Development Department, and I've been part of it now for at least 4 years. I was appointed from the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake to be a member and to sit there as an executive, just as a board member. So I sat there for up until this past year, and I went back to a meeting in December of 2025, and I was asked, they were looking for a chairperson. The chairperson was retiring or moving on to another position, and the position was available. So they asked, and it went around the table, and I didn't think I was qualified enough for it, even though I'm not afraid of chairing anything. I'm not afraid of anything, but I was a little bit afraid of this for whatever reason, because I hadn't chaired anything in a long time, like a meeting, like people of this magnitude, of business people, of leaders, and so on and so forth. So I was a little bit nervous, but I decided to put my hat in there, and sure enough, I was appointed, and so far, so good. I started my position in January, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job. I'm actually proud of myself because I go back to how I used to handle other areas where I chaired, and I was always like, right to the point, you have an agenda. Mm-hmm. If you have anything to add, I give them time to add, make additions, and if not, I stick to my agenda right to a T. Yeah. And everyone has a role to play, and I allow everyone to have their role, and I allow everyone to have a voice. And to go back a little bit further to explain who I am, I've been involved in my community my entire life, except when I left the community to go to school and to work. I was outside of my community several times, and I've been working, to be very blunt with you. It seems like it was yesterday that one day I was the youngest person going out to work. And now it's like, I can't believe the years that have passed. Sometimes I reflect on it and I cannot believe where did the years go. However, I've been working since I'm 10 years old. Wow. So I've worked for many years to help support my family, which was a large family. And then I finished high school, and then I worked in a little place and a little restaurant. And that's what gave me the incentive to know that I wanted more than that. And I was basically capable, and I knew that I had much more to offer in this world than to serve people. Not that I didn't want to serve people, that wasn't the point, but I need to do something more with my brain. Mm-hmm. So I went back to school, I went to college, and then from there I never looked back. And my first jobs, I worked in Ottawa, I worked in Quebec City, I worked in various places. I worked at the Native Friendship Center, the Department of Indian Affairs, and I worked in education. I worked in all aspects of everything. And then while going to school, I also discovered that I really wanted to be involved in the judicial system. And that's what I did. And I was the very first female Native court worker in Kahnawake. And my area was like Aguzasna and Ganasadaga and, various places. So I was basically always on the run. I was always on the road. I was going from courts from Saint Jerome to Valleyfield to Longueuil to Montreal. I was everywhere. I did that right up until there was a position available in Kahnawake as Director of Justice. And at the time, again, I second-guessed myself because I didn't think I was smart enough for it. I didn't think I had enough experience for it. I didn't think I was old enough for it. I was too young because I looked at other people. And then when I looked at it, there was a person that was the same age as me. But because he was a man, it was different, So yeah. I was a little bit nervous about that because I had worked all in the men's world. And it was very different from when you're the only woman there. And I know what it is. So it was very challenging, put it this way. But I applied for it and I did get the job and I held it right up until 1992. And in 1990, just before the crisis, the crisis that wasn't created by us, that was created by DSQ and Ganasadaga, our neighbor and sister community. And at that point, it hadn't happened yet. I ran for council on July 7th, 1990.
Wow.
Little did I know that I was not walking into a job. I was going to be thrown right into the midst of a fire.
Wow.
And the crisis happened on Wednesday, 4 days later rather. And it was an eye-opener. It was scary. There was a lot of times it was very scary. It was very challenging because I wasn't sure of how things worked. You had to be able to have skills to negotiate. You had to have skills to keep your community safe. You had to have skills to keep your community comfortable and safe and to make sure that there was food coming in, there was medicine coming in, there was various things that were happening. And I had to leave my community on several occasions where there was no food coming in, there was no nothing. And I had to go and I left with a sister and we went on a boat to go and get food for my mother. And there was a lot of things happening. We had duffel bags to carry everything. And we went and it was the scariest feeling because I was terrified of water and still am to this day. I was terrified. And, because you have to cross the river. It was almost like, I know it sounds silly now, it's almost 36 years now. Yeah. But 36 years ago, it felt like I was crossing the ocean.
Yeah.
And coming from the Kahnawake Marina to cross the St. Lawrence Seaway and then go into the other river to go to Lachine. It was just unbelievable. And every time I went over, it was scarier and scarier. We had very choppy weather. The waves were unbelievable. It was windy. It was hot. It was just unbelievable. But I did it. I survived it. And I think it just made me stronger to be able to say that summer taught me something and made me grow up, number one. Yeah. Even though I was already in my early 30s, but I still didn't feel that I was grown up enough yet. But it made me grow up. It made me realize who I am, who I want to be, and what I want for my community. And that nobody was ever going to try to push me around and get away with it. Never. And I don't care who it is. And as long as I have a voice and I'm alive, I'm not going to keep my mouth shut. And that's what that summer taught me, and really taught me to know who our friends were, who our enemies were, and some of the people just here in Chateauguay that went out of their way to help us. It's like I can name 100 names that I could tell you off the top of my head where people risked their own vehicles, their own lives, I guess. I don't know if it was that bad, but it was pretty bad. It was pretty nasty. And people were coming through various places, like on the old, by Gordon Street and all those areas to help us, to bring food to us, to bring medicine to us. We had people come in to help us with our bell because during the summer of 1990, we had around July, towards the end of July, we had a really bad summer storm, wind, really, really windy, with hail, and it was extremely hot. It was like almost 100 degrees, and we had that storm, and the winds were just unbelievable. We lost power. We had no phone service. We had no nothing. And we were able to get a man to come in and help us get everything back online before anybody else was. And that man went out of his way, and he was a bell worker.
Mm-hmm.
And we also had a hydro worker that helped us. So, to say that you paint everyone with the same brush is so wrong, because there's good people everywhere. The people that helped us. And I know that whenever there is a crisis, we all come together to work together. And that's how we survived it.
Yeah, I remember, not to put my nose into it, but I remember taking a pontoon from the marina in Chateauguay, the Williams family, and we used to bring food and gasoline and medication.
I remember, Sergio.
That was something else.
I was at the receiving end, so I know. And it was quite a summer, but I was on council, and it took us at least that year of 1990. It took right up, it ended like basically September 6th, the bridge opened, the roads were back open. There was a lot of anger everywhere. There was anger in Chateauguay. There was anger in St. Constant, Saint Isidore, everywhere. There's a lot of anger in Kahnawake, where Kahnawake said, well, perhaps maybe we should go and stone them too, like what they did to us.
Yeah, that was
maybe
horrible.
Maybe we should go and do this. Maybe we should go and do that. But
well, there's an elder man who died of a heart attack. Yeah.
2 of them died.
Jeez.
And what we decided, to tell our people that we are much better than that. And we are going to be better than that. And we are who we are. And that's not our nature to go and retaliate and do anything like that. No. We did what we did, and we had to survive, and we did. And let's move on from here. And it took a long time to get back to normal. It set us back for a long time because of the horrible relationship between Chateauguay and all the other communities. But we also had people that stepped in to help and to say that we need to bridge this. We need to bring the people back together, and they did. And a lot of it was good. It was positive. There's always some negativity, but that doesn't matter. The positive outweighs the negativity.
Exactly.
And I always looked at it as that. And then as the years passed, I told you it took us several years before we would basically move forward on a lot of things, because there was still a lot of unanswered questions. The negotiations were still taking place. The transfers of land still never happened. Look, we're in 2026. It's still not done.
Yeah.
So, do you have to have another crisis to do it? I would say not. But you need to have strong people to negotiate. You need to have strong people to fight tooth and nail without having to go to any extreme of fist fighting or taking out weapons and whatnot. That's not who we are. It's to sit at the table and to try to negotiate what we can and to do the best that we can. So I was involved with many issues. I was involved with justice all along, all the years. And then as the years went by, there was always the office that was economic development in the community. And it was always to try to bring, they tried, numerous community businessmen tried to do a chamber of commerce, almost like what Chateauguay had, well, basically parallel to it. And the Chamber of Commerce, it would work, and then it didn't work, and then it would work, and then it didn't work, because it was always there was no funding for it. There was no total commitment for it. There was no jobs for it. It was always on a volunteer basis, and people would get elected for these positions or volunteer for it. So then finally, there was a lot of things happening here and there, and council was always offered to go into business with this company or that company, or to bring businesses to the community that would bring the economy, that we would be able to create an economy, and then it would be able to create jobs for the community. It was always on job creation. So economic development was always there. It started around, I would say, around the late 80s that the office was open, because when I started to work for Justice, it was 1986 and it was already there. And then in 1999, we decided to create an entity by itself that would be arm's length from the political table. And we called it Télévision, which is the business entity. And so since then, and they were elected positions, and they were for the business people in the community. And that's how it ran for many years. It's been running like that. And so far, there's you look at it, what they're there for is they're there to create business. They're there to help the business people with business plans, how to run their business from a small business to a big business, and to try to offer them the services that they need. And even if it's to write their business proposals, to help them do it, and to create training for them. Like if they want, say, somebody from out of school, if they're going into IT or business administration, and they want to learn how to have skills to open up a hair salon or maybe a restaurant.
Yeah.
And they so they come to the Dunizakta and look at the entrepreneurship, and they have the training. And within the training, it gives them the tools to work with to try to create a business plan and to look at the feasibility, if it's feasible or not. So that's basically how it goes. And then they help them with their books, and they help them with their reporting mechanism, like if they need funding and they need more funding. So they do a really good job. And then they provide training. There's always training going on. Like as we speak right now, when I left the board meeting this evening, there's training taking place tonight there. So there's always something, whether it's public speaking, whether it's computer skills, or whether it's leadership skills or business skills or whatever it may be. There's something going on at least twice a week at night. So there's always something going on there. So it really is. So I'm actually very proud of the fact that I accepted the position of chairperson, and I'm happy that I'm back involved with that aspect. So I'm very pleased. But Sergio, you look back at the beginning of time, you go back to many years ago, there always was an agreement. Maybe it was obviously all unwritten, of course. There were all oral agreements and whatever it may be at the time. But people always had business going together. They bartered. They did everything.
Yeah.
And I know, like through the stories that I knew from way back when I was a child, of how people did their business. They did beadwork.
Yeah.
And they traveled for miles and miles and miles on foot. And they went all over the place to go and sell their beadwork. And in the process of doing that business, the money they came back with, they were able to do other things with the money, and then to buy more products, to do more, and to sell more. And I do know from my late mother-in-law, who you tell me that her grandmother and her sisters would travel all the way to the Hochelaga market and all the way to Toronto, the exhibition in Toronto, which goes back to the 1800s, the Toronto one, and even the Hochelaga one, and which is, I believe, if I'm right, Hochelaga, and right now my memory is not that great on that one, but I believe that it was at Atwater Market. And then they used to go further to the Jean Talon market, where that exists today. That's where there was a big market too. And what they did was, when they traveled, they carried raw tobacco on their back, all cut from the fields and everything, and they wrapped it in leather, in whatever they had, and they strapped it to their back, and that's what they went and bartered with. They bartered with it and got their beads and did everything, all their business. It was a trade. It was a business trade. So it's not something that just happened today. And then you look at how it comes down to today. People still do the beadwork. It's very popular in Kahnawake. There's beadwork classes continuously always going on, whether it's for moccasins or purses or anything for that matter.
Contracts, turo wampu.
What it is, whatever they may do.
Yeah.
And then with all of this, and then there's the language, there's this, there's that, everything that's going on all the time. And basically what they do is they go and they sell their wares, and then it's like the powwows, and there's such popularity in that now. So they make their own regalia, and so there's beadwork, there's always something happening, and the interest is so great that there's classes continuously happening. And then you look at how it moved to a certain where that's popular, the businesses, and then you look at our community, how strong our community is, and how big it has grown with the businesses. And then you look at the tobacco trade, good, bad, or ugly. The tobacco trade has brought in the wealth in the community, and it has brought in a lot of things to our community. It has some of it is negative, of course, but it doesn't matter at this point. But I can't say it doesn't matter, because it does matter. Because at one point, when when there's a lot of business and it's all focused on one part, and there's a lot of money involved in it, And then you have the young people that say, well, I'm not going to go sit in a classroom 5 days a week and just get nothing for it when I can go work in a tobacco shop and make $50 an hour, or maybe that's a little extreme, but $25 an hour. And even today with the what do you call it, the hourly wage, that it still isn't that amount. But whatever the case is, so that was a little bit difficult on education, like the education slacked off, but now it's back up there where I'm very proud to say that at this point, we have 7 people like are moving into medical field. We have doctors that are coming about. We have young engineers that are coming about. We have technicians that will take over the reins of for X-raying, and we're looking in the future for Kahnawake Hospital that we're going to be able to do our own dialysis, kidney dialysis unit, that we're going to be able to have a childbirthing unit as well.
Wow.
So that's all coming. Look at the X-rays. It's state-of-the-art. They have state-of-the-art eye clinic, state-of-the-art dentist clinic. They have everything it's just growing and growing and growing. And we have our own people that are going into the schools now and doing it and coming back with their expertise and staying here with us. So that's really something.
But,
and then
the economic aspect of the Kanien'kehá, I mean, all First Nations were doing a lot of trading. We know that, for example, the Wendat would come from the Great Lakes with copper, and there was a lot of exchanges throughout nations, and there was a lot of movement, a lot of business. And I believe I remember going to Kahnawake, as a young student, trying to learn and going to the shops and picking up on documents that I couldn't find at the libraries, universities or what have you. I would literally have to go to Kahnawake and go to the shops and find documents such as the traditional trading rights of the Mohawks. And all these things you have to discover, but you have to find on your own, but it exists. So there is this history of, doing business, seeing that it's taking a lot of, momentum right now. I understand that 1990 was really a dip, a big one. But do you feel like there's always been like a constraint around Kahnawake trying to limit, talking about the Indian Act for one, but also the economic pressure, like businesses that say, well, I remember in the 90s, there was always the question of no tax on the cigarettes, no tax on the booze, no tax on the gasoline. So there was a lot of people that were negative outside of Kahnawake. Yet a lot of people would go to Kahnawake and they would buy and purchase stuff. So it's like, I had done a conference on economic tensions between Kahnawake and Chateauguay in 1994. It didn't happen because of all kinds of reasons. But basically the question was, this tension and this miscomprehension of the legality, the right, to have your own economic space. Is that still a challenge today?
It still is a challenge right up to as we speak, because of the fact that according to we as Kanien'kehá people, we have a right. It's our inherent right to what we have, and it's our inherent right to trade and barter and do business with whoever we choose to do so, and without any kind of taxation. And we also are not tax collectors for any foreign government. We're not, and we never will be. And we even have, we even did a resolution with the late Joe Norton, who's the Grand Chief, and we passed a resolution that we're not tax collectors, and nor will we ever become tax collectors. So the outside, of course, there's rules and regulations with the outside. We know that. We know what the tobacco law says. We know what the liquor permits say, and on the outside and within the structure of the government and now the permit system, we know that. We're aware of it. But the fact remains that it's our inherent right, and we have pursued it. We have pushed it. We have pushed the envelope as far as we could. And more recently, it's been tested right to the limit in the Derek White and Hunter Montour case. And that case was adjudicated in the federal court. And the decision came down November 1st of 2024, if I'm right, I'm just a little bit lost.
I believe it's a provincial. It's a provincial court.
Yeah, that's right.
And now they appealed it.
And Quebec has appealed it.
Yeah.
But within that first decision, the Superior Court judge. Her name was Sophie Gregoire. No, not Sophie Gregoire. Sylvie.
Yeah.
Sylvie. No, I have the name wrong.
I forget the judge's name.
Right now it's Sophie. But anyways, whatever the case is, she said in her judgment that we have a right to make a business. We have a right to make business for ourselves and a business to support yourself, support your community, and so on and so forth. And that is our inherent right. And according to all of the Supreme Court judgments that have passed across Canada over the years, because people have fought a lot of things, right from the fishing rights to the hunting rights, to our rights as employment, to our rights of taxation on our unemployment dollars, which is the Kahnawake case of 1983. So all of these cases have been looked into, and that's what she did in her judgment, in her final judgment. And it gives us the right to do this. That it's our inherent right. So now Quebec has appealed that. It's obviously going through the appeal mechanism, I guess at a slow pace, but I'm not sure where it's at. And because I was part of the original case, part of being the witness and everything in there. And right now we have another case that's pending, right? It's not pending, it's moving, is Robbie Dixon, which is Rainbow Tobacco. Rainbow Tobacco, and Rainbow Tobacco was suing the province of Quebec for the illegal seizure of all of his vehicles and everything. And you know, like what we've said, and we have a law, we've been drafted this tobacco law for years now, and we're right at the point where we could pass this law if immediately, whatever, as soon as it won't be long. I'm hoping and praying that it'll be really probably before summer, at least I hope so. It's been many years in the process of coming to fruition. But the issue is that we want to have, and it goes all the way back to the days of sitting at the council table with the late Joe Norton, the late Billy T. Rivers, the late Andrew DeLow Sr., and the list goes on and on. I could name 20 names to it. And myself sitting there as a younger person, but knowing the history, that we should be able to have free trade amongst our brothers and sisters on Turtle Island, which is all of North America and the Americas. We should be able to do that free trade. But the problem is, how do we get our product from A to B, or A to C, or A to D? How do we get it there? It still has to pass a highway. It still has to pass another territory, another province, another state, another country, so on and so forth. So that's the part that I feel that is lacking right now because we don't have that agreement. But it was worked on at one point, and I'm hoping and praying that it's going to happen. It's going to happen because in Robbie Dixon's case, it's clear. It's clear that we have a right to sell our products to our brothers and sisters. And if our brothers and sisters want to smoke in any Native community across Turtle Island, who's to say that we're doing something illegal by getting our tobacco to them?
Well, one example that I give, even when you sell to non-Indigenous people, an example I give is any Canadian citizen who crosses the border to the United States and they purchase cigarettes, for example, and they cross the border and they don't declare them. Will the Quebec government sue the business that sold the cigarettes to the citizen who didn't declare? Or is it the citizen who didn't declare that's the culprit? Exactly.
Declare. And that's how the government looks at it. So how come here it's different? And why don't we signal out?
And that's the aberration, I think, that they put on Indigenous people in Quebec and Canada, whereas the provincial and even the federal, but mostly the provincial states, the intermediary states, sort of put the responsibility on Indigenous people as if they were the culprits, but there is no culprit. You have a right to sell to who you want.
That's right.
The problem is the other example I give also to people is, if you go to Ontario and you're a Quebecer, your address is in Quebec, you pay your income tax and your taxes in Quebec in a city, and you go to Ontario and you buy liquor at a liquor store and you come back to, it's illegal. You're supposed to declare that to the Quebec government. If you don't, so is the Quebec government going to sue the liquor retailers of Ontario? I believe it's provincially. So one province is going to sue the other province for selling alcohol to citizens of. It makes no sense. So why? That means they don't recognize sovereignty.
No, they don't.
So and I mean, the judgment that you mentioned, Derek White, where you have the judgment, the judge, she was specific. She started off by the two-row wampum, the original contract. Then she moved on to the proclamation.
And also the Silver Covenant Change.
Silver Covenant Change, the Royal Proclamation, stipulating that, you know, there are fundamental rights. And way after that comes the Constitution. And before it was actually liberated from the Crown, it took time. It's 1982. So she directly said, Indigenous people have sovereign legitimacy in doing business. And I think that's fundamental in that judgment.
Yes, it is, 100%. And she made it very clear. And as far as my opinion, and my opinion stands, is that for the Quebec government to be appealing this makes no sense at all, because they're totally disregarding our rights and totally disregarding our fundamental rights as being Onkohue, according to all of what we just finished saying, going all the way back to the two-row wampum and right up to the Constitution, where our rights are entrenched within it.
Exactly. And I feel like by not recognizing the sovereignty, then, you know, the judgment comes out. It really spins on the media. It spins for like a day, maybe two. In the papers, you see it just once. You read it, it's done. There's no more story. The next day doesn't come back. But it's fundamental. It's like the most important judgment in the history of economic relations with the Kanien'kehá, and it's like a footnote. When in fact, this is like this is red flags, you know, flares going up in the air going, look, there's a judge who recognized fundamentally the sovereign right of, you know, the Mohawks, and we just didn't hear. So they're still not creating that space. It seems that once a judgment like that comes out, of course they appealed it, but even if they do appeal it, there should be an intellectual reflection, you know, journalists, intellectuals, people in universities. This should have been like the talk of the town. It wasn't.
But I believe that in all due respect of it, I believe that there is an interest happening slowly where the students are getting involved with students from various other nations and other businesses to look at this as this decision was a historic one.
Yep, it'll create a precedent.
And definitely they want to make sure that it's not forgotten about, because I told you that I participated in a TV program, or interview rather, and that would be presented in, I believe it's going to be sometime at the fall of 2026, and it'll be shown on CBC TV. And I'm looking forward to that, because it was very lengthy, and it was extremely, like, we covered everything, every aspect of the tobacco trade, of how it started and where it is and where we are right now. And that's even before we knew what was happening with Rainbow Tobacco. Yeah, it's spectacular. So all of this is going on, but yet, I mean, there's a lot of development in Kahnawake. There's more and more businesses. People go to restaurants in Kahnawake now. I mean, I remember in 1994, one of the questions was, you know, is the incentive of no taxation the only reason, you know, people actually go to Kahnawake? And at that time, it was cigarettes, alcohol, and gas. That's it. But today, there's quality services, there's all kinds of services, restaurants, all kinds of... There's like 5-star restaurants.
Exactly, high-end.
They are actually very, very beautiful.
Exactly.
They're frequented by many people, like a lot of outsiders all the time. It's a very, very busy place. Then you have the Playground Poker place, and that's just an amazing place.
Yeah, and it's partly owned by members of the community.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It's owned. Yeah. It's owned and operated by members of the community of Kahnawake. And then you have the restaurants that are operating, and you have other businesses that are developing. And there's so much things that are happening in our community that sometimes we have our own hardware store.
Exactly.
We have a look at the cultural center that's coming up on the way. Like you just traveled this way, coming from Brossard.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you use that highway, but whatever the case is, the cultural center, which is due to open to the community or to everybody in general, I think is at the middle of June. And that is going to be like first star rated of everything. And just the history in there. And like you mentioned about documents, coming in for documents, the Cultural Center has so much stuff in their library that they have now. And there's so many things that people have been looking for and bringing it to them. So there's a lot. They have an extensive library. They have an extensive pictorial. Like if you want pictures going all the way back to the turn of the century and even longer than that of what Kahnawake used to look like, what the rivers look like, what the community looked like. They even have pictures of even before the Mercier Bridge was constructed, the CPR bridge, and it's just amazing to see that. It's all you see is land and water, and you see people hunting and fishing and everything that used to take place once upon a time.
I bet they're also going to have audio, because I know with the radio station, there's a lot of history, a lot of people, elders that went on shows and talked about, you know, I remember young, I used to listen to K103 going to, crossing the bridge going to
and they still have it right now. They have every Wednesday, they have the Kanien'kehá talk show, and it's in complete Mohawk once a week on Wednesdays from 12 until 1. It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, even if you don't completely understand it, I think you get a grasp of it, of what they're talking about.
Yeah. Well, just to listen to the language spoken, the language of this land, you know, it's quite interesting, and it's a very I think it's something it could manage to absorb you when you listen to it. You don't understand, but it's great to hear.
And it's just amazing, even that too, like the language, you could talk about that forever. It's like there's such a resurgence of everything, of your knowledge of who we are and who we want to be. Like what I said in the beginning, like even the language, because back when I was young going to school, I came from a home where I had Mohawk parents that spoke Kanien'kehá together, always together, Kanien'kehá rather. But to us, they spoke to us in English. And only later on, like I would ask my mother, "Ma, how come we don't know our language? How come you didn't teach us?" And her answer was very simple. They didn't get sent to residential school then. They were one of the lucky ones, I guess. And so were we. But the reality of it is they went to Indian day school. It was run by the nuns and the priests and everyone else. And they were forbidden to speak their language. And when they went to school back in the 1930s, and that goes all the way back to then, the 1930s, it was 1937 when my mother went to school. And my father earlier, he was older. And they only went to school with one language. It was Kanien'kehá. That's all. That's all they spoke was Kanien'kehá together. And they had to learn English pretty fast. Yeah. They were punished. They were really, really punished. And my mother always said she would not have us go through with what they went through.
Yeah, it's like they don't want to transmit the trauma that they went through. So it's.
But in some sense, we suffered the trauma anyway.
Yeah, because you didn't learn the language. We didn't learn
our language. We didn't learn anything. I mean, some of us, I started to learn my language probably in 1998. And that's when I made a decision to do so. And I started to learn it. I still don't think I could ever sit down and have 100% conversation with an elder or someone. They probably laugh me out. but I know I can understand it now, which is a lot more than I could 30 years ago. I couldn't do it, or more than that, I couldn't do it. But now when you look at all the children and all, like I look at all my family, I have a big family, and not only me, but many other community members and their grandchildren now, everyone goes to Mohawk immersion, at least the majority of them with a Mohawk immersion. So the children are learning right from 2 and 3 years old, from daycare right all the way up to go to high school. We have a Kahnawake survival school. And that too was built in defiance of Bill 101.
Exactly.
And all the policies that the Quebec government was trying to put on the people, that they must have they must have had one parent who went to English-speaking school in order for their children to attend high school in Chateauguay. And at the time, a lot of the people, don't forget, our history goes all the way back to the ironwork, iron workers, and a lot of people moved their families away and stayed away for many, many years. So now they come back here. Now their children or grandchildren are trying to go to high school, and now they can't because of this Bill 101 and the regulations within it. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh my goodness. Yeah. So when they make their decision to leave and to walk home and create their own school, I mean, look at it. Look what has happened, how it's grown today, where at one point people thought, well, it's not going to work because people want to make sure that their education is credited and everything. But look at where they are today. They go to college, university. We have very successful people that come out of that, went to survival school.
Yeah.
So it has as much of a good record as any other school now.
Yeah.
And it's recognized.
And it's a word that comes back a lot in all the shows that I've been doing. I think this is the 7th one out of 12, and it's resurgency. And, speaking to Gerald Alfred about it, it's in his book. It's all about the land, and a lot of times when I speak to non-Indigenous people about resurgency, they imagine like Intifada or something like cocktail Molotovs, and but resurgency is the revival. In fact,
it's the revival of who we are.
Yeah, exactly. It's breathing back the spirit into the nation and getting that space, making that space for the existence of the people, of the original people, and it's great. I'm happy that we can have this conversation because it's part of that.
Yeah.
I think that if settlers or neo-settlers, the way I like to identify ourselves as neo-settlers, we need to learn about these things so that we could make the room. If you don't know somebody's trying to pass behind you when you're in a line and they're in a hurry, you'll never know they're there unless you turn around and notice what's around you, what's your environment. And if you don't turn around and look around once in a while, you don't know who's there. And when you do, then you go, oh, I'm sorry, and you can let the person pass.
Yeah.
But if you don't turn around and you always say, I'm here, I don't care who's behind me, let them wait.
Yeah.
Then that shows a lot about who you are and how you are. And I think the conversation is important to start. We need to have this conversation so we know that there's someone around us, not necessarily behind us, but most of the time ahead of us. Because speaking about different governance systems, I truly believe that Indigenous governance is way ahead. It's just that it's been buried, or they tried to bury it, and this resurgency is now waking it and making it more, bringing it back into the light.
It's almost like if you simplify it in several words, you simplified the Turo Wampum. And the Turo, from what I understood, was you're in a canoe, and you're either in the canoe or you're not.
Yeah.
And you stay in one and the other one stays in the other one, but you can still travel smoothly down the river, the same river, in two ships, one a ship and one a canoe, and without any kind of interaction or no battle or anything. And the way I look at it, how I perceive these things, is we can live in peace and harmony with our neighbors, such as Chateauguay, Saint-Constant, Saint-Remy, Saint Isidore, all of these communities. There's no reason why we can't live in peace and harmony.
Cohabitation.
Yes.
It's cohabitation.
And also to defend and to fight for our rights, because we still have land issues. We still have the issue of the land claims and all of that. And that's another big fight that's coming. That's another big issue of land, of the claims.
Yeah.
And we're well beyond many years of rental fees that have not been paid to the community of Kahnawake. And you look around and you see everything that's being built and everything. And sometimes I just shake my head in absolute wonder, like, how could this be happening,
It's absurd. In fact, it's completely
totally,
absurd.
Totally.
Yeah. I was, I was young when 1990 came around, and my impression was, why are we, like, speaking about the settlers, why are we upset with the Mohawk? Aren't we, like, supposed to be, in solidarity with them? Don't we understand that what's happening to them is wrong? If everybody stood with the Mohawks, it wouldn't have lasted 90 days. It would have lasted maybe 3 or 4.
That's right.
If the people would have said, listen, they're taking their land. It's wrong what they're doing. And people don't stand up. And I think if we had more connection, more human connection, more dialogue, if the non-Indigenous or the settler society was more aware, that this would not have happened. Because I think, you're mentioning that you could have named 100 people, maybe thousands of them would have stood up and just because we didn't have this conversation, I think that's why it's important that we're talking about this today.
And then you look at it, you look at the issue of when there's a crisis, your whole community comes together. No matter what it is, we survived. There was an ice storm and everyone came together.
Yeah.
We had another where there was a flood. Everyone came together in one particular area where many people were losing everything, like their basements, you name it. And we all helped each other. And in 1990, we did the same thing, even though in 1990, it was much more difficult because we couldn't just drive and go to Super C or to IGA or one of the stores that existed before and just go and get, we couldn't leave our community or you couldn't come back in.
Exactly.
Because I, for one, I'm a classic example of it because I was in Chattagee on 9/11, I mean on that day, and I lost my car, not lost it, I had to leave my car in Chattagee and walk through the bushes with an elderly person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I didn't get my car back until September 6th for July, August, and September. Until that day, I was riding a bike, running from meetings to meetings. And I was part of every episode that happened when the Army raided the island. I got there on a bike, believe me. So it was very, very difficult. And we went through a lot, but we persevered and we're still here.
Yeah.
And we are resilient and we are still always going to be here. And as I said, people have to continue our issues and not to forget who we are.
Exactly.
And to continue with our language, our land. And the land is important because without land, you have nothing.
Exactly.
And without language, you have nothing.
Yeah.
So you have to continuously work together to ensure that continues. And then the business model of economic development has to continue too. And we offer the best services possible that people that come into our community, I mean, you can come into our community for anything that you want. Well, I can't say anything because we don't have everything. Because one thing that the community has stood up for is that they're not going to be like other communities as having cannabis. And the community said no.
Yeah.
And the young people started the protest. The young people from the schools to say, we don't want this. We don't want this in our community. And the council had to listen to it. And they just recently made the decision that there's going to be no cannabis in our community.
I saw that on
and
the
so
news.
It's an amazing victory. It's an amazing statement for the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake to stand up and say that this is it. And then there's other people that want it to do it, so you have to look at the business side of it. So they have to understand where the community feels and the young people and the elders. I mean, everybody must have a say in something that's detrimental.
There are other alternatives, like, for example, the deal that was signed with Hydro-Quebec on, actually, Kahnawake now has shares on the future project of connecting the New York.
That's right.
So these are fundamental. It's like the Quebec institution, Hydro-Quebec, recognized the sovereignty and the legitimacy of Kahnawake before the province actually did. That was, I think it was spectacular. I believe it's Sophie Brochu that was the president CEO of Hydro-Quebec. Yeah, and then Sabia, and now we have a new one. But I think that ideology, that way of thinking has been transmitted all the way till today. And I think it's a good thing because getting shares out of fundamental infrastructure such as energy is like very important. I remember working on the wind farm project when it was at Saint-Cyprien there with Dewa, and that was very difficult. The population was pushing back. Yeah, that was tough, but I'm very happy to see that, these are projects, but I don't think that project is really moving forward now, or is it still?
I'm not really sure. It's still ongoing, of course. Yeah. But I don't think the other one is. But presently, right now, the hydro one is, Yeah,
it's moving forward, And it's going on territory. So, definitely there's interest there. And there's a source of revenue that's important. I was reading, I believe, today on LinkedIn, there was a report, I believe, on the fiscal situation of council. And they were mentioning, that more and more Kahnawake is looking at trying to auto-finance, the services. And one of the ways of doing that is finding alternative sources of revenue and economic development. That's certainly. Right. So you have a lot of pressure on your shoulders, I guess.
Well, you have to be able to develop your own source revenue.
Yeah.
You have to, and you have to find ways and means and methods of doing it and to achieve it. and to keep it moving. So there's always something, your mind has to be continuously going, but then you have the people who work in the organizations who are all equipped and educated to do all that.
Yeah.
So it's quite a wheel that's going all the time.
That's right. And a lot of people, you listen to the prejudice. I mean, people aren't mean. They just don't know better. They've been taught this all the time, and you get these comments like, yeah, well, they get everything. The government pays for everything. And you're going, well, that's obviously you don't know how budgets work on territory. So yeah, it's a myth, I think, that we should break, and people should realize, especially non-Indigenous people should realize that the source of financing, you have to manage everything, right? From healthcare, education, everything is covered by council, but not the financing is not guaranteed.
Well, I believe that the federal government, it's not a question of believing, it's a fact that the federal government has a fiduciary responsibility to provide food, housing, shelter, education. They have all that, and medical. So there's no doubt in my mind that can stop, because that's going to go unless the council decides to enter into another agreement. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
I do not see that happening. That can happen to other nations across the country.
Yeah.
No, and Kahnawake will never agree to something like that. Never, to give up our inherent rights to our free taxation and everything. And in order to get to something else, no, that will never happen.
Well, in fact, it's exemption from taxation because,
And the fact is, we have to stay together, and we have to stick together, and we have to just move forward and just. And I've always believed in this. Like when I was younger, sometimes you don't really see it. Like I used to hear this statement come in many years ago when I was young, that you don't change horses in midstream. You don't. Never. And then you look at it another way, that I have always heard, that if you're in the way, get out of the way and let us move forward. Just move out.
Yeah.
And I feel that's the same way. Not to have like a mean personality, of course not.
No.
But you have to be able to deal with people in the right, proper fashion. And if we're looking at businesses and in the economic development aspect, you have to be open to everything that comes with it, even to the language. And a lot of people adapt to it. People know that Kahnawake, the predominant language, is in English. And ultimately, one day coming, it'll be Kanien'kehá. That's what it's going to be.
Exactly.
And then there's the French aspect, that some people that do come here and come to Kahnawake and want to be served in their language. There's some people that can do it. And we have the means and methods to do all those things.
Yeah.
Because a lot of our people that go to school outside also go to French-speaking school.
Yeah, I think there's more
because they want to survive in the business entity. Yeah. Yeah,
I believe there's more and more people from Kahnawake that also speak
yes,
French.
There is. Yeah.
Actually, at a certain point, I certainly believe that eventually there'll be more trilingual people in Kahnawake than outside.
Believe it or not, Sergio, at once upon a time, when I was a child growing up, the languages that I grew up listening to all the time was French, Mohawk, and English. Always.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
It's
it goes all the way back to the turn of the century. Before the people went to ironwork, they worked on the railroads, they worked on the bridges, they worked on everything.
Yeah.
And they moved their families to Lachine and Villemard and LaSalle and everything. And that's how a lot of people learned their French. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I see that the time is running out. We're just 2 minutes short of the end of this show. And I just want to thank you very much. I don't know if you have something you would like to add, maybe, or if you have a message for people in Kahnawake, not Kahnawake, but in Chattagee.
I would just like to say Nyamagowa to you, Sergio, for inviting me to the very important program. And the whole thing for the community of Kahnawake is we must stick together, always move forward and continue with all of our businesses, because we have the inherent right to be who we are and to do business on our territory, and without having any outside entity telling us that we have to collect, as we are not tax collectors for any foreign government. Yeah. And that's where our position is and has always been.
Kanien'kehá.
You're very welcome.
For those who don't know, that means thank you very much. So I'm going to switch here into French for the closing. Donc, voilà ce qui conclut notre émission avec notre invité, qui est la présidente du développement économique de Kahnawake. J'espère que cette émission vous a plu, que les sujets vous ont interpellé. Certainement, on a vu comment l'évolution s'est faite d'une situation où on faisait des affaires partout librement à une situation où les affaires étaient contrôlées par l'État, à un certain point même criminalisées, alors que la légitimité est encore là. Et là, on a vu avec les récentes décisions juridiques que la légitimité y est toujours. On attend les décisions de cour d'appel, mais je suis certain que ça va être intéressant pour la suite des choses. Alors, revenez-nous la semaine prochaine pour la prochaine émission qui s'intitule les Kanien'kehá, hôtes sur leur territoire et nos voisins au quotidien. Au revoir à la prochaine.